Hi guys, what are we gonna do today? Today we're gonna play with jelly printing. Some different ideas, using stencils, using stamps, doing image transfers from magazines. You can use another color besides blue. Let's get started. So I'm gonna show you what I am going to be using. You're gonna need a gel plate. This plate is a little larger, it's 12 by 12, and today I'm just gonna do 8.5 by 11, so I put that on the back side, so I knew where I needed to use the paint, and I didn't necessarily have to use extra paint over here to start with. And you're going to want a brayer. Of course, you're gonna need your acrylic paint. We're gonna start with something really simple. I'm just going to start with these car images. You can either start with a light paint or a dark paint. So I want a thinner layer of paint and I want it to stay wet just a little longer. I just spritz just lightly a little mist of water and I'm putting some paint down here and I am rolling this out. You don't want it too thin, but you don't want it too thick, and a lot of that really is going to be playing. You don't want it so it's translucent so you can't see it, but you do not want thick paint on here for a transfer, but you also don't want it to dry out. I am laying my image side down, and I'm going to press this. You can just press on it. I use my brayer, and I don't mind that it's on the back, because you need to work quickly. And you can start to pick up, and you're going to be able to see if it is picking up, and it looks like that one picked up very nicely. Okay, so now I'm going to let this set just for 30 seconds or so, just to I don't want it super hard and dry, but I want it dry enough I can put a lighter image over this. If you already had a sheet of paper that already had paint on the back and it was just the background, you could immediately put that on here and it would go on to that. I'm going to use an off-white, but you could use whatever color you want. And once again, I don't want this super thick. I don't worry about my brayer too often because most of the time the paint is already dried. And I don't want to press too hard on my paint that's underneath and smear it. I just want to be able to cover this. So I'm going with a little bit of a lighter touch. Once again, you want to work a little more quickly. And the more you do it, the more you'll get the timing for it. Now I'm immediately going to grab a clean sheet of paper, lay this down, and once again I'm going to brayer it. And I'll start with the corner to see if it's picking it up, and it is picking most of it up. And you can see we have gotten many of the cars. Down in here you don't see it quite as clearly, but I think it's really fun. And you can see these were the cars that were in there. So this one I had just used the dark blue, and I put my two car images down, and then I let it set just for a few seconds, and then I put the light tan off-white on top of that. And then when I pulled it off, this is what I've got. Perhaps the top cars had higher contrast, and maybe that's why they came out darker. There are some others that I had done in the blue and whites, just with some of the vintage car images. Hey, let's try another one. Let me clean this off. I have a bucket of water next to me, and I'm gonna wipe this down because I'm gonna be using something different. But you can use baby wipes. You don't necessarily have to get it all off. Sometimes it's fun to have the mixture of colors with your next image. The longer you let it set on there, the harder it is to get on my brayer. This is already pretty much dry by now. Unless I'm going to a completely different color scheme, I usually just wipe this down every so often. So I'm just gonna spritz this again, just lightly. I don't want a lot of water on here, but I want it to just stay a little longer. So it looks almost cloudy, you're covered, but it's not super thick on this. I'm going to use this Fun Birds paper. Let's see what we get. Okay, can you see the image on there? I think that came out kind of nicely. So I'm gonna let that set for a second. I'm gonna put another lighter coat on it, and then I'm going to add some words behind it. Okay, I'm gonna add a light tannish yellow to this. Some of the birds came out a little more than others, but I am going to continue to use the sheet. You can see what's left on here. I'm going to add more of this darker color. And now I'm going to add some words to this. So I'm just going to put this on top. And I am actually just going to layer this right on top of this and see what we get. Oh, it did get a little bit mixed in. I can make out a few of the birds and you can see some of the words. It's still a beautiful background, even though there's only some of the birds, but I said a lot of it is really trial and error. So this one, I'm just going to do a background first. I'm going to stamp this. So it's pretty bright here, but you can actually see where it picked up the stove and the words right here. So you can see on this one with the oven, part of it lifted up great. The other part, it got really dark in there. So a lot of this is going to be trial and error. I am going to use this really intricate stencil. This is another thing I really love with this jelly plate, because I've done this one and I love the stencil, but the pieces are so intricate. It takes a lot of patience and a while to stencil it. So this is what we're gonna do. And I am just going to carefully roll this. You don't wanna move your pieces, but you just want to roll this over. More paint on here. We're gonna have a two-tone blue on this one. I'm gonna lift this up. Let that set just for a second. I'm gonna add a lighter color on top. So you wanna make sure your paint is kind of set. It doesn't have to be 100% dry, but it needs to be set a little. And I added a lot of paint over the stencil. So I'm just gonna give it another second or so. Okay, so when we did this one, I had just stenciled the dark blue typewriter on here, and then I added the light blue paint. And I'm not sure if my paint was just too thick on this one where it didn't pull it all up, but when I pulled it, more of it came up and the typewriter almost came out darker on this one. I had just put the light blue on the paper already, and then I did the bronze stencil and put that on. And then I just used some black ink and stamped over the top when it was dry. So here's another one I had done, and I had put the gray paint down first, and then once again, I had just put that on my paper, and when that dried, then I did the black stencil on the jelly plate and transferred it on. So this is the one that we stamped. Put the dark purple down, and then I just stamped over it, and then I pulled it up. And then this edge hadn't come out quite as much, so I just stamped white over that with a stamp later after it was dry. And then this was the other side of it that hadn't pulled up. I added a little bit of light blue over that, and it pulled it up. I could add more colors to this, but I thought it was interesting. It's your second takeoff from the same print. This one is actually a blue with a silver. This one, can you make out all of these crocs? I'm just gonna show you a few of these fun pieces that we did. This one says home comforts, and actually it's balls of yarn and threads. I have some lampshades here. I think these came out very, very nice. The green, put my paper down, and then I did a yellow over that. Another fun one with just blues, and then another one with off-whites and blues and book paper and birds. Here was another one we did with the stamp, like we used the other stamp. So what I found when I was doing this for 4 days straight, that there really is a lot of trial and error in this. At first, I couldn't get any of the images to transfer on very well. And then I found if I took my image, I tried a repositionable spray adhesive on the image. That seemed to work great for the first day. Then I ran out of that, and then I tried a little bit from the end of one can, and it didn't work at all, so I thought maybe that's not it. Then when I tried making my paint much thinner, that one I think has worked the best. But when your paint is thinner, you have less dry time, so when you pick it up, you may not pick up all of your paint on there. And then a few times I added thicker paint, but same thing, it takes longer to dry, so you have more work time, but it didn't want to pick it up also. So also, don't forget, when you still have images on your plate, if you just add more paint on top, it like reactivates the paint on the gel plate, and you can pick it back up. But a lot of it's going to be trial and error, playing with water, playing with sprays, playing with other mediums. Definitely there's a difference using regular copy paper, tissue paper, and cardstock. So no matter how your jelly prints come out, you can see they're all so different, and just stamping on them afterward makes such a difference. They are great backgrounds, so don't ever feel like any of them are failures, because they're great to use as backgrounds to stamp other things on. So I hope you guys give this a shot. It's a little messy, and you're probably thinking, wow, why would I want to do this? Because you do get some really cool looks, and it's really fun to play with. So give it a shot and have fun.